Words have power. They have the ability to stir emotions, evoke memories, and trigger deep psychological responses. When you send a message to someone, especially someone you want to influence emotionally, you're not just sending a combination of letters and spaces. You are sending energy. You are planting a seed in their mind, a thought that will linger, an idea that will grow. People often underestimate the power of a single message. They think it's just a text, just a few words, but in reality, it's an emotional trigger. A well-crafted text has the ability to bring someone back to a moment, to a feeling, to an experience they thought they had forgotten. It can make them nostalgic, make them miss you, make them rethink their choices. It can make them wonder, make them question, and make them crave an answer. The right words placed at the right time have the ability to shift an entire dynamic in a relationship, whether romantic, professional, or personal. Think about the last time someone sent you a message that hit you deeply. Maybe it was just a simple line, something about a song you both used to listen to, a place you once visited together, or even just a random statement that made you pause. The reason it impacted you wasn't just because of the words themselves, but because of the emotions attached to them. Words are triggers, and when used correctly, they can bring up emotions that someone didn't even realize were still inside them. Human beings are emotionally wired. We react more to feelings than we do to logic. That's why advertising works so well, because it doesn't just give you facts. It makes you feel something. A single text can do the same. It can tap into an emotional reservoir that someone has buried beneath their daily distractions, their responsibilities, their ego, their pride. When you know how to craft a message that reaches past their surface thoughts and into their subconscious, you create an effect that lingers. The key to triggering emotions in a text isn't about what you want to say, but about how the other person will receive it. It's not about pouring out your feelings, begging for attention, or over-explaining yourself. That approach weakens your position. Instead, the most powerful messages are the ones that tap into their emotions, not yours. It's about making them feel something so strong that they are pulled into a reaction without even realizing why. For example, if you send a text saying, "I miss you so much, why aren't you responding?" It immediately places you in a position of lack. It communicates neediness, which is the opposite of attraction and influence. It gives the other person control over your emotions and allows them to dismiss or ignore you without consequence. Now, imagine sending something like, "I just heard that song we used to play in the car. Took me back for a second." That one simple message does several things. First, it's indirect. It doesn't demand anything. It doesn't beg for a response. Second, it's a psychological trigger. It taps into a shared experience, a moment that holds emotional weight. Third, it makes the other person feel something without forcing them to. It allows them the space to process, to reminisce, to feel a sudden wave of nostalgia they weren't expecting. And once they start feeling that emotion, they associate it with you. Another example of an emotionally triggering text is something that creates curiosity. Something like, "You won't believe what I just realized about you." That text plants a question in their mind, a hook that they can't ignore. Their brain immediately starts working to fill in the blanks. What did they realize? Is it good? Is it bad? Do I want to know? That one text can occupy their thoughts for hours, even days, if written correctly. And that's where the power is. It's not about demanding attention. It's about earning a place in their mind. Most people approach texting all wrong. They focus too much on themselves and their own emotions. They text to get reassurance, to get validation, to seek a response that makes them feel better. But real influence isn't about seeking. It's about creating an effect. It's about crafting words that pull someone into a feeling without them realizing they were being led there. This is why emotional triggers work so effectively. Human memory is deeply tied to emotion. People don't remember what you said as much as they remember how you made them feel. If you want to trigger someone's emotions with one text, you have to tap into their feelings, not just express yours. You have to make them experience something, whether it's nostalgia, curiosity, excitement, or even a little bit of jealousy. For instance, instead of saying, "I hope you're doing okay," which is neutral and forgettable, try saying, "I just had the craziest conversation about you today." That message does something different. It makes them think, who was talking about me? What did they say? Why is this person bringing it up now? It creates a mental loop that they can't easily escape. Even silence can be a trigger. If someone expects you to reach out and you don't, that absence speaks louder than any words. But when you finally send a message, it has weight. It has impact. A well-timed, well-crafted text can shift someone's emotional state entirely. It can make them rethink, reflect, and even regret certain choices, but only if it's done correctly. This is why you must understand the emotional depth behind communication. It's not about sending a text in hopes of getting a response. It's about creating a response internally within them before they even type a single word back. Before you even think about sending a message that will trigger someone's emotions, you must first take control of your own. Most people make the mistake of texting or reaching out when they are emotionally unsettled, and that energy seeps into the words they send. The energy behind a message is just as important, if not more important, than the actual words used. When you operate from a place of emotional instability, your messages come across as desperate, needy, or reactive. And the moment someone senses that you are acting from a place of insecurity, you lose power in the dynamic. Emotional control is the foundation of influence. If you cannot manage your own emotions, you will always be at the mercy of someone else's actions. You will find yourself reacting to their silence, overanalyzing their responses, and crafting texts that are rooted in fear rather than strength. When you reach out from a place of emotional imbalance, you are essentially handing them the remote control to your feelings, allowing them to dictate your mood, your peace, and your self-worth. This is why the first step in learning how to trigger someone's emotions with one text is learning how to master your own. Emotions are powerful, but they are also deceptive. They have a way of convincing you that your immediate feelings require an immediate response. The need to text someone in an emotional state often comes from a place of discomfort, a need to relieve anxiety, to gain reassurance, to feel heard. But the irony is that the more you seek emotional relief from another person, the less power you hold in that relationship. If you allow your emotions to dictate your actions, you become predictable, and predictability weakens influence. Think about a time when you were upset, anxious, or unsure about where you stood with someone. Maybe you stared at your phone, debating whether to send a message, checking their social media, overthinking every detail. That internal tension, the racing thoughts, the restlessness, the feeling of needing an answer right away is a sign that you are emotionally reactive. In that state, any message you send will carry a needy undertone, whether you realize it or not. And the person on the receiving end, even if unconsciously, will sense it. On the other hand, when you master your emotions, you shift the power dynamic. You are no longer seeking validation, no longer desperate for a response, no longer trying to control the outcome. Instead, you operate from a place of certainty, and certainty is magnetic. When you are calm, centered, and in control of your emotional state, you naturally become more attractive. Because people are drawn to those who are not easily shaken. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. It means observing them without allowing them to dictate your actions. It means recognizing that feelings are temporary, that impulse-driven decisions often lead to regret, and that the best messages are sent from a place of strength rather than weakness. Instead of texting out of fear, anxiety, or loneliness, you pause. You take a step back. You assess whether your emotions are guiding you toward an action that will serve you in the long run or simply provide short-term relief. One of the most powerful things you can do before sending a text is to ask yourself, am I texting because I want to or because I feel like I have to? That simple question reveals a lot. When you feel like you have to text someone, it usually means you are seeking reassurance, clarity, or validation. And when your motivation is external, the power is no longer in your hands. But when you text because you want to, from a place of confidence and emotional control, the energy behind the message is completely different. This is where detachment comes in. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you are not emotionally dependent on the outcome. It means you can send a message and remain unaffected by whether or not they respond. When you reach this level of emotional control, your texts carry a different weight. You are no longer trying to pull someone toward you. You are creating an emotional impact that naturally draws them in. The way you feel when you send a message influences how the other person perceives it. If you text someone with nervous energy, overthinking every word, they may not consciously recognize it, but they will feel it. On the other hand, when you send a message from a place of certainty, it lands differently. It holds power. It creates curiosity rather than pressure. The best messages are sent when you are already emotionally fulfilled, when you do not need a response to feel validated. If you text someone while feeling emotionally unstable, you are gambling with your self-worth, placing it in the hands of another person's response. But when you text from a place of emotional control, you shift the balance. You are no longer the one waiting anxiously for a reply. You become the one who sets the emotional tone. Controlling your emotions also means mastering the art of patience. Impulsivity is the enemy of influence. Many people feel an overwhelming urge to text immediately after an argument, after being ignored, or after overthinking a situation. But when you act impulsively, you lose sight of the bigger picture. You end up sending messages that you later regret. Or worse, you reinforce a dynamic where the other person knows they can control you with silence. When you resist the urge to react emotionally, you gain leverage. You give yourself time to think, to reflect, and to ensure that whatever message you send is intentional rather than desperate. The strongest text messages are the ones sent from a place of confidence, detachment, and emotional mastery. They do not beg for attention. They demand it effortlessly. Once you take control of your emotions, you will notice a shift, not just in how you communicate, but in how others respond to you. People are naturally drawn to those who are emotionally stable, those who do not crumble under pressure, those who do not seek constant reassurance. The moment you stop reacting from emotion and start acting from intention, you become the one who influences, rather than the one who is influenced. The key to triggering someone's emotions with a single text is understanding their psychology. Every person operates based on subconscious patterns, emotional triggers, and mental associations that have been built over time. If you can tap into these elements, you gain the ability to create a response before they even realize why they're reacting the way they are. People do not respond to logic as much as they respond to emotion. And once you understand this, you will never communicate the same way again. Most people make the mistake of thinking that what they say is what matters the most. But the reality is that it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, when you say it, and what emotional associations the other person already has in their mind. The best messages are not random. They are carefully designed to trigger a reaction based on what you already know about the person. This is why a generic message won't work as effectively as one that is specifically crafted to tap into their subconscious emotions. Think about it like this. Everyone has emotional buttons. These are the things that instantly spark a feeling within them. For some people, nostalgia is a strong trigger. A message that reminds them of a past experience, a song, or a moment in time can instantly pull them into an emotional state. For others, curiosity is their biggest weakness. A message that makes them wonder, what does this mean? What are they thinking? Will occupy their mind far longer than a simple statement. Some people respond strongly to a sense of loss or the fear of missing out. When they feel like something is slipping away, they suddenly want it more. Understanding which of these emotional buttons applies to the person you're messaging is what allows you to trigger an emotional response with just a few words. A powerful way to do this is to use open loops. Open loops are psychological techniques that leave the brain craving closure. When someone is presented with an incomplete idea or an unanswered question, their mind naturally seeks to resolve it. This is why cliffhangers in movies and TV shows work so well. They leave you hanging, needing to know what happens next. A well-crafted text can do the same. Instead of saying, "I was just thinking about you," which is a statement that doesn't demand a response, you can say, "I just realized something about you that I never noticed before." That small change does something powerful. It creates a loop in their mind that they feel compelled to close. They will wonder, what did they realize? Is it something good or bad? What do they see in me now that they didn't before? And just like that, they are emotionally engaged before they've even responded. Another psychological trigger that works exceptionally well is contrast. Contrast is the difference between what someone expects and what actually happens. People naturally respond to things that disrupt their patterns. If you always text in a certain way at a certain time or with a certain energy, breaking that pattern can instantly trigger an emotional response. For example, if someone is used to you always reaching out in a predictable way and you suddenly change your approach, they will notice. If you usually send long, detailed messages and instead you send something short and mysterious, it forces their brain to reassess the situation. They will wonder, why are they acting differently? What changed? That small shift in behavior creates intrigue, and intrigue is one of the most powerful emotional triggers. Scarcity is another psychological factor that influences how people respond to messages. The more available something seems, the less value it holds. This is why people often ignore texts from those they assume will always be there. But the moment something becomes scarce, when they feel like your presence, attention, or energy is no longer guaranteed, they begin to want it more. The key to triggering an emotional response is to create a sense of value in your presence. This doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It simply means recognizing that people appreciate what they feel they might lose. A text that subtly implies you are moving on, that you are no longer as emotionally invested, or that your energy is being directed elsewhere can create an immediate emotional shift in the other person. One of the most effective ways to do this is by using past emotional connections to your advantage. If you and this person have shared strong emotional experiences before, referencing those moments can bring those emotions back instantly. The human brain does not distinguish between past and present when it comes to emotions. If you can make someone recall a strong feeling, they will experience it in real time. A simple message like, "Do you ever think about that night we stayed up talking until sunrise?" can transport them back into the emotions of that moment. And once they start feeling that way again, they subconsciously associate those emotions with you. Another way to leverage psychology in texting is to use suggestive language that plants an idea in their mind without explicitly stating it. Instead of saying, "I miss you," which gives away your emotional state too easily, you can say something like, "It's funny how certain people stay in your mind no matter how much time passes." This statement is indirect, yet it forces them to think about whether they are one of those people. It creates a moment of introspection, and introspection leads to emotional engagement. People also respond strongly to the feeling of being understood. If you send a message that makes someone feel like you truly see them in a way that others do not, they will feel an instant emotional connection. A message that reflects their inner thoughts, struggles, or desires without them having to say it will always create an impact. If you know they've been feeling off lately, instead of asking, "Are you okay?" which can be brushed off easily, say something like, "You've been quiet lately. I know you, and I can tell something is on your mind." That one message makes them feel seen. And when people feel seen, they feel drawn to the person who recognizes them on that level. Another powerful emotional trigger is uncertainty. People often assume that they have a person figured out, and when that assumption is disrupted, it forces them to re-engage. If someone thinks they know how you feel, how you'll respond, or how much you care, shaking up that expectation can instantly make them reconsider. Instead of always being available, always responding immediately, or always showing the same level of interest, shifting your behavior slightly can create a psychological gap that they feel the need to close. Understanding human psychology is the secret to crafting texts that don't just get a response, but trigger an emotional reaction that lingers. People remember how you make them feel more than they remember what you say. If you can master the ability to send messages that trigger emotions, curiosity, nostalgia, or even a slight sense of loss, you will always hold a level of influence in any interaction. Emotional connection is the foundation of every strong relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or professional. The moment someone feels emotionally connected to you, they begin to invest in the interaction on a much deeper level. Most people make the mistake of assuming that emotional connection happens naturally over time, but the truth is, it can be created intentionally. The way you communicate, the words you choose, and the emotions you evoke all play a role in how deeply someone feels connected to you. One of the most powerful ways to create an emotional connection through text is by making the other person feel seen. Most people go through life feeling misunderstood, overlooked, and undervalued. When you send a message that makes someone feel like you truly see them, not just on the surface, but on a deeper level, it instantly creates a sense of connection. A simple statement like, "I don't think most people realize how much you actually give to others, but I see it." That one sentence holds power because it acknowledges something they might not even say out loud. It shows awareness. It shows that you notice the effort they put in, even when no one else does. When people feel seen, they feel drawn to the person who recognizes them in that way. Another way to deepen an emotional connection is through vulnerability. People often assume that strength is about being emotionally guarded, but real strength comes from the ability to be open without fear. When you share something personal, it invites the other person to do the same. Vulnerability is contagious. If you send a message that reveals a personal thought, a hidden fear, or a past experience, it creates a space for the other person to share as well. Instead of keeping conversations on the surface, messages like, "I don't usually talk about this, but lately I've been thinking about," open the door to deeper conversations. People connect over shared experiences, struggles, and emotions far more than they do over small talk. One of the most overlooked ways to create an emotional connection is through anticipation. Anticipation is the feeling of looking forward to something, and it is one of the strongest emotional forces in the human mind. When people anticipate something, they mentally and emotionally invest in it. This is why people get excited for vacations, dates, and even messages from certain people. They've been conditioned to expect something meaningful. If every time someone hears from you, they feel something, excitement, curiosity, warmth, they will begin to associate that feeling with you. A simple text like, "I have something to tell you, but I'll wait until later," plants a seed in their mind. They start wondering what it could be. That thought lingers. The emotional investment has begun before you've even said anything significant. Timing also plays a crucial role in creating emotional connection. The impact of a message is not just in what is said, but when it is said. If you send a text at a moment when someone is already emotionally engaged, after a long day, during a quiet evening, or in a moment of reflection, the message will hit differently than if it was sent in the middle of a busy, distracted day. People are most receptive to emotional connection when they are in a certain state of mind. Understanding the right moment to send a message can make the difference between it being forgotten and it being deeply felt. A strong emotional connection is also built through shared experiences. Even if you're not physically present with someone, you can create the feeling of shared experiences through words. A message that brings them back to a specific moment, a memory, or even a future possibility creates a sense of emotional closeness. Something as simple as, "I can still hear the way you laughed that day," when immediately brings them back to that experience. The human mind doesn't distinguish between memories and real-time emotions. When someone recalls a memory vividly, they feel it as if it's happening again. If you can make someone relive a positive moment through your words, they will naturally associate those feelings with you. Another powerful technique to create an emotional connection is through emotional mirroring. This means matching and reflecting the other person's emotions in a way that makes them feel understood. If they express excitement about something, mirror that excitement. If they express frustration, acknowledge that frustration in a way that validates their feelings. People are drawn to those who make them feel like their emotions matter. A simple message like, "I know exactly what you mean, and I can only imagine how frustrating that must feel," makes someone feel heard. When people feel heard, they feel connected. The key to emotional connection is making conversations feel effortless and natural, rather than forced or calculated. The best emotional connections don't come from grand gestures. They come from the small moments of understanding, the subtle exchanges that build trust over time. People don't always remember what was said, but they remember how someone made them feel. When every interaction leaves someone feeling good, understood, or valued, they begin to crave that interaction. This is how emotional connection is built. Through consistency, authenticity, and a deep understanding of human emotions. Curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. It drives people to explore, to ask questions, and to seek answers they wouldn't have otherwise looked for. When curiosity is triggered, the mind becomes fixated on finding a resolution. This is why cliffhangers in movies and books work so well. Once the mind is left hanging, it craves closure. This same principle applies when crafting a text message that can trigger an emotional reaction. If you leave something open-ended, unsaid, or slightly mysterious, it forces the recipient to think about you more than they normally would. Most people make the mistake of over-explaining when they send a message. They give too much information, answer their own questions, or eliminate the need for the other person to engage. But when a message is structured to create curiosity, it flips the dynamic. Instead of you chasing their attention, they begin to chase closure. They want to know more. They start wondering about your words, your meaning, your intention. A simple text like, "You wouldn't believe what I just realized about you," is far more powerful than saying exactly what's on your mind. The first message makes them ask, what did they realize? Is it something good, something bad? Their mind immediately becomes engaged in figuring it out, and that's where curiosity takes over. People respond to uncertainty much more than they do to certainty. If something is predictable, it's easy to ignore. But when something doesn't fit into an expected pattern, the brain takes notice. If you always send texts in a certain way, long messages, emojis, or detailed responses. Suddenly changing your communication style can create intrigue. A short, out-of-character message like, "Wow, I just saw something that completely changed how I see things," forces the other person to wonder, what did they see? What changed? The sudden shift from expectation to uncertainty makes them engage mentally and emotionally. Another powerful technique is delayed gratification. Most people answer questions right away, but when you hold back just enough, you create anticipation. Instead of saying everything at once, giving just a little piece of information keeps the other person wanting more. For example, instead of saying, "I just heard something interesting today," you could say, "I just heard something today that made me think of you, but I'll tell you later." The delay in getting the information makes the recipient invest their thoughts in waiting for your response. The more someone waits for something, the more they value it. A great way to trigger curiosity is to tap into their natural emotions and insecurities. Everyone has unspoken thoughts and hidden fears that they don't openly express. If you can phrase a message in a way that makes them reflect on themselves, it will linger in their mind. A message like, "It's funny how certain people always seem to repeat the same patterns without realizing it," makes them think about their own behavior. Are they repeating patterns? Is this message about them? Even if they don't respond right away, they will keep thinking about it. Curiosity is also deeply linked to exclusivity. People want to feel like they have access to something others don't. If you suggest that you have information, insight, or knowledge that is rare or special, it naturally makes the other person more interested. A message like, "There's something I've noticed about you that I don't think anyone else has ever pointed out," immediately creates an emotional reaction. The person will wonder, what do they see that no one else does? What makes me unique in their eyes? That moment of mystery creates emotional engagement because people are drawn to those who make them feel special. Another way to ignite curiosity is to challenge expectations. If someone thinks they know you well, suddenly doing or saying something unexpected forces them to reassess. A message like, "I used to think I had you all figured out, but now I'm not so sure," plants a thought in their mind. What do they mean? What changed? The idea that you see them differently makes them want to understand why. This naturally leads to more engagement, more thought, and a deeper emotional connection. People also become curious when they feel like they are missing something important. This is why incomplete sentences or messages that imply there is more to the story can be incredibly effective. Instead of saying, "I was just thinking about something from our past," you could say, "I was just thinking about that one time. Never mind, I'll tell you later." That small hesitation leaves them wanting to know what you meant. Their mind starts filling in the blanks. The moment someone starts creating their own mental images or scenarios based on what you've said, you have already made an emotional impact. Another way to leverage curiosity is through contrast. When you say something that seems contradictory or unexpected, the brain automatically seeks to understand. A message like, "I never noticed this about you before, but now it makes so much sense," creates an instant need for clarity. The person wants to know what you noticed. They start thinking about what it could be, replaying past conversations or interactions in their mind. People are naturally drawn to stories and narratives, and you can use that to your advantage in texting. Instead of stating something directly, frame it as a story that makes them want to know the ending. A message like, "You'll never believe what I realized about us today," pulls them in. They want to know what you realized. They want to hear the conclusion. Storytelling activates the part of the brain that processes real-life experiences, making the message feel more engaging and personal. Curiosity can also be created by referencing something from the past in a way that leaves room for interpretation. A message like, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had gone differently that night?" forces the other person to revisit old memories. Their mind begins to play out different possibilities, and in doing so, they become emotionally invested in the conversation. The more someone thinks about a message, the deeper the emotional impact it has. Using curiosity in texting is not about manipulation. It's about creating meaningful engagement. When you understand how the brain works, you can communicate in a way that naturally draws people in. The best messages don't just get a quick response. They linger in the mind long after they are read. A well-placed hint, an unanswered question, or a subtle suggestion can make someone think about you more than a direct statement ever could. Emotional impact is the invisible force that shapes how people remember you, how they feel about you, and how much they value your presence in their life. Most people assume that relationships, whether romantic or platonic, are built on logic and reason, but the truth is, emotions dictate the depth of any connection. If you can stir emotions, whether it's excitement, nostalgia, curiosity, or warmth, you create a lasting impression. Words alone don't make people remember you. The emotions they felt when interacting with you do. That's why some conversations are instantly forgettable while others linger in the mind for days, weeks, or even years. A single text, when crafted correctly, can leave someone thinking about you long after they've read it. The key to triggering emotions through text is understanding what emotions already exist within the person and subtly amplifying them. Everyone has unspoken feelings, unresolved thoughts, and hidden desires. Most people go through life with emotions buried beneath the surface, rarely given a space to be acknowledged. But when you send a message that pulls those emotions to the surface, it creates a powerful impact. A simple text like, "I was just thinking about the way you light up when you talk about things that matter to you." It's rare to see that kind of passion in people these days. That message does more than just offer a compliment. It makes them feel something. It makes them reflect on their own passion, their energy, their uniqueness. People often don't realize how much they crave validation for their deeper emotions. The world is full of surface-level interactions, small talk, casual check-ins, generic responses. But when someone receives a message that speaks to who they are rather than just what they do, it cuts through the noise. A message that acknowledges something deeper, like, "I don't think most people realize how much you carry inside you. You're always strong, but I wonder if anyone ever asks how you really feel." That kind of message holds power because it taps into emotions they may not even articulate themselves. It makes them feel seen, understood, and appreciated on a level they rarely experience. Another way to create emotional impact is through nostalgia. The human brain is wired to respond strongly to memories, especially those tied to strong emotions. A message that takes someone back to a meaningful moment immediately evokes the feelings associated with that time. Instead of saying, "Hey, hope you're doing well," imagine sending, "I randomly remember that time we insert shared experience." It's crazy how moments like that stick with you, right? That one message has already transported them back in time, making them relive the emotions of that experience. The more vividly someone recalls a memory, the stronger the emotional connection they feel in the present. Emotional impact can also be created through contrast. When people experience an unexpected shift in emotion, it leaves a deeper mark. If a conversation has been lighthearted and playful, suddenly shifting to a more thoughtful or introspective message catches the other person off guard in a good way. For example, if you've been joking back and forth and then say, "Beneath all this humor, I think you're one of the most genuine people I've ever met," it creates an emotional response because it adds depth to the interaction. People don't expect depth in casual conversations, so when it happens, it stands out. Another overlooked but powerful way to leave an emotional impact is through unfinished thoughts. The mind hates unfinished business. And when you send a message that leaves something open-ended, it naturally lingers in the recipient's mind. Instead of saying, "You're such an interesting person," you could say, "There's something about you I still haven't quite figured out." That message immediately makes them wonder, what do they mean? What haven't they figured out? that curiosity lingers, and with it, an emotional tie is formed. Storytelling is another powerful way to create emotional impact. Humans are wired to respond to stories because they create emotional immersion. Instead of just stating something directly, framing it as a story makes it feel more personal, more real. For example, I was thinking about something today. I met someone who reminded me of you, not in the way they look, but in their energy. It made me realize how rare it is to meet someone who genuinely makes people feel understood. It made me appreciate you even more. That kind of message doesn't just say something, it makes them feel something. Emotional impact is also created by mirroring the recipient's energy and emotion. If someone is feeling down, acknowledging that feeling in a way that doesn't dismiss it, but instead offers understanding, can be incredibly powerful. Instead of saying, I hope you feel better soon, imagine sending, I can't pretend to know exactly what you're feeling, but I do know this. Some of the strongest people carry the heaviest emotions. And I see that strength in you. That message does two things at once. It acknowledges their feelings while also lifting them up, making them feel understood without invalidating their emotions. Another way to create emotional depth is by introducing what-if scenarios. The human mind is naturally drawn to possibilities. A message like, do you ever wonder how different things would be if we had met at a different time? Makes someone think beyond the present moment. It taps into emotions tied to destiny, timing, and the idea that life could have unfolded in countless ways. This kind of messaging makes conversations more meaningful because it pushes beyond the ordinary and into the realm of deeper thought. Emotional impact is also amplified by using sensory language. The more a message engages the senses, the more deeply it is felt. Instead of saying, that was such a fun day, you could say, I still remember the way the air felt that day, how the sun hit just right, and the way we laughed without even thinking. By adding sensory details, you transport the recipient back into the moment, making the memory feel more real and emotionally charged. Another aspect of emotional impact is making someone feel irreplaceable. People don't just want to feel liked. They want to feel like they matter in a way that no one else does. A message that reinforces their uniqueness, like, there are some things about you that no one else could ever replicate, immediately triggers a strong emotional response. Everyone craves the feeling of being special, of being valued in a way that is different from anyone else. People rarely remember the exact words you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. If every message you send carries an emotional weight, whether through nostalgia, validation, curiosity, or appreciation, you naturally become someone they think about even when you're not around.